Okay, let me know when you guys can hear me loud and clear. Hopefully that window won't get any brighter today. All right, let's see. We hear you. We hear you. Yeah, just right off the bat, as usual, this is the end of month live Q&A. It was put together very last minute. I was considering doing it a week from now after the newest Broken Silicon and the 6900 XT launch, but I figure it's pushing it, and let's just do this now. And so with that in mind, just a quick reminder. I go through Patron reader mails first, in addition to thoughts from this month being November. This is the end of November live Q&A. And so if you want to ask a question and make it easier for me to notice it by tipping, save the tipped questions for about 30 minutes from now, because I might not get to them if you tip me for a question now. If you just want to tip me, I guess go for it. But otherwise, that's how that works. And also keep in mind that slow mode is on. So don't spam. First of all, just don't spam comments in general. But like, if you rush out a comment, you're going to have to wait 2 minutes to ask it again. So put thought when you ask questions as well. Okay, and let's see here. Remember to hit the like button. Double check that you're subscribed right now as well. If you're watching, hit the like button. There's hundreds of people already watching. So let us see here. Yes, I am slightly early this week. I don't know. This would be the first live stream where everything seems to have started and is going on without an issue. First time ever, right? Okay, so at the beginning of this live stream, I do want to touch on something that I don't want to have to touch on, but I really do think it is quite important. So let me just write that down as a timestamp too, and as people are joining, an important message. So when I look at exit surveys on Patreon, I can see, kind of like some feedback on why someone would have left. And I saw someone recently say they don't want to be part of Twitter attacks on other YouTubers. And this wasn't from months ago. This was from like a week ago or something, which is weird to me. I recently disagreed with not an Apple fan on some of his info, and I didn't tell people to attack him. I had him on Broken Silicon and talked to him openly. I have nothing to hide. And just because I disagree with someone does not mean it's a blood feud. It seems like there are some other YouTubers who disagree with that. I'm not talking, and again, I'm not, certainly Paul is not one of those people. Paul is very easy to talk to. But what I want to say is this. I don't know why someone would have said they don't want to be part of these attacks, because I try to go out of my way to tell people to not attack, especially other YouTubers. So I guess I just want to open up this loose ends, unfortunately, with this important message, which is that nobody go attack other YouTubers in my name. And I feel like I've seen every other tech tuber have to make a video saying this at some point. Well, I guess it's my turn. I see it in the comments on Hardware Unboxed. Tom says this about you. I didn't say that about you. And I see it in the comments on my YouTube videos all the time as well. Someone saying, ooh, shots fired at Hardware Unboxed, despite me not intending to take any shots at Hardware Unboxed, right? Just because I disagree with someone doesn't mean it's shots fired, and does not mean I want you to go attack them. And in fact, I often don't know when I disagree with people. I don't watch most videos from most channels now because I don't have the time, right? So when someone says, ooh, he's attacking this person, I may not even be aware we disagree on something. Usually I'm not. So I just want to open this up by saying that, because I saw that exit survey where someone said they don't want to be part of Twitter attacks. Well, good, don't. I'm not telling anyone to be part of Twitter attacks. I've even had to go out of my way to say something wasn't an attack, even though I thought it was obvious, So again, I just an important message. If you think if someone left, the MLID community because they thought I was making you part of an attack, I'm literally telling you not to attack people. Okay, with that out of the way, let us get into some of the reader mail questions here from patrons first. Let me see here. So Certain Singer writes in, just like you guys can if you support us on Patreon, and asks, with these inflated prices from AIBs for the 6800 and 6800 XT, do you think it could be because AIB partners were operating under the original assumption that the 6800 XT would be the highest end card from AMD and try to push it as far as possible? Do you think they had enough time after AMD decided to release the 6900 XT to pivot their product stack? It just seems odd that some of them approach the MSRP of the 30. Well, they're not approaching the MSRP of the 3090 as far as I've seen. Unless it's like 15. I haven't seen a $1,500 6800 XT. I'm sure that's in Europe, though. I've seen prices get insane in other parts of the world. But I guess my answer to all of these questions, Cern Singer, is like in this order, like no, no, yes, no, or something. So let me back up a bit here. AMD never, and this is important because I've talked about this about a month ago. And I'm seeing, and I understand why you might not remember I said this because it was a month ago, but AMD never really intended to launch the full 80 compute units to gamers. They thought Ampere would be a little more efficient and about 10% stronger than it was, but it wasn't. It wasn't. They were unimpressed with the 3090, and so they said, you know what? Even if we would rather sell the full compute units to the professional market, to data centers, let's sell them to gamers to make a big name for ourselves this year. And so that's why at the Zen 3 reveal, you know, where they ended it with that big Navi benchmark, that's why that big Navi benchmark, the first one they showed off, ended up being a 6800 XT and actually a slightly underclocked 6800 XT. It's because the 6900 XT wasn't done yet, right? It was last minute. So keep that in mind. They were never going to release it was a last minute decision to bring the full die to gamers. And so the answer to one of Cern Singer's questions then is, number one, yes, they did push the 6800 XT extra hard to be close to the 3080 because they found out they could be. And number two, yes, the 6900 XT was last minute. AIBs didn't have time to prepare coolers for it. Although there may be some AIB ones at launch, I'm pretty sure most of them are going to be a few months from now. And then when it comes to the whole MSRP thing, it has to do with shipping and availability. There are only so many chartered flights right now. This is something I covered very extensively in my video, the 3060 Ti Shuffle, where I talk about how a lot of the packages used to ship, a lot of the shipping used for packages is on passenger flights. And how many passenger flights are there right now this year due to a pandemic? There's about half as many in America, about 75% a third. It's about a third of where it usually is in Europe. In the UK, it's down to about a fifth. Why do you think availability is worse in some areas right now? Because there's less flights. That's why it's taking longer for some products to get to some countries. Doesn't matter how many times I've tried to explain this to people. You're not really guaranteed anything at a global launch. This is how all tech launches go, and it's a pandemic year. So that's all I've got to say about that. And that's why the prices are up. And I think a lot of people go, well, so doesn't express shipping cost like $20? Yes, but there's only so many flights right now. So you have Apple and then to a lesser extent, Sony and Microsoft outbidding people. When it comes to well, first of all, Apple's margins are insane on their phones, and they'll pay top dollar. They're a $2 trillion company. And then when it comes to the consoles, they don't even really make money on the hardware. They just want to get the consoles to people before Christmas so that people can download a bunch of games. That's where they make the money, on the software during Christmas. And they'll lose money on the console sale for that. Yeah. So that's all I've really got to say about that. And frankly, I'm kind of getting really tired of talking about this stuff that I think is beating a dead horse. But I thought I had to mention it one more time. Watch the 3060 Ti Shuffle. I actually think I did a good job of explaining it there, better than I had done in the past. Jacob writes in and says, what's the availability of the 6900 XT? Guys, I've said this multiple times. I haven't heard there's going to be a ton of 6900 XT disability. In fact, I've heard it's worse than every other launch from AMD this year by a large margin. We'll see, but I don't know. And again, it was a last-minute product, so why would they have a lot at launch? Really, the main products AMD plans to sell are 6800 XTs and 6800s. the 6900 XT is kind of just there, just poking Nvidia in the eye and saying your 3090 isn't that strong. Haha, it's not that strong. They never really intend to sell that card in high volume, at least based on what I've heard in the past. Who knows if that'll change, but that's all I've ever heard. And that's all I've ever said, too, is low availability on the 6900 XT. And I've heard nothing to suggest otherwise right now. And and again, it doesn't matter anyways. I've seen people calling the 3060 Ti a paper launch, and it is not a paper launch. It is a full-throated launch for sure. It's just out of stock because, I don't know, demand is up 40% this year. Okay. And then Jacob also asked about the 3080 Ti. Guys, I think actually the 3080 Ti is a boring card to speculate on. You know, whether it's called the 3080 Ti 20 gigabyte, the 3080 20 gigabyte, the 3080 Super, when you remove VRAM constraints, the 3090 is only like 10% better than the 3080. So, like, what do you want to know about the 3080 Ti? It's going to be in between a 3080 and a 3090, and there's only a 10% difference. All of these top-end cards are about the same performance. So the only thing really making the 3080 Ti worth anything is that it will actually have enough VRAM. That's about all there is to say about it. I really don't need a source on the 3080 Ti. If there is one, you know how strong it's going to be, because the 3090 is barely stronger than the 3080 besides VRAM. Okay, let me write that down as a timestamp. And then let me continue rolling through the subjects. Okay, so Navi 22. That's actually something that I do want to talk about a little bit. If you haven't watched my Navi 22 leak yet, it's out. Performance, launch, pricing, power consumption. Go watch that video, guys. I thought it was actually very funny with my Navi 22 leak. How many people, it was really highly rated. And I saw a lot of comments saying, oh, wow, Tom was really well measured in this video. And I just have to go, well measured? What are you talking? I'm the one who said that the 6800 XT was unlikely to beat the 3080 while all AMD fanboys were attacking me about that. And then on the other hand, you had people saying somehow Navi 2X was going to be barely stronger than a 3070. Also a ridiculous idea. I thought I was well measured in all of my big Navi leaks for the most part, at least in the past few months. I guess I don't know about a year ago. Everyone was kind of just whatever a year ago. But like, so I actually want to talk about this a little more because I don't think anything I said before or now was that crazy. And I do have an update. So I guess before I get ramble any longer, let me say this. I've been told that Navi 22 should have 96 megabytes of Infinity cache. I think this is an exclusive from Moore's Law is Dead. I kind of hate the word exclusive. I hate when people put exclusive in the title because they assume no one else has talked about this. So I don't know if anyone else has, and I don't have enough sources to where I'm going to double down on it yet, but I'm pretty confident 96 megabytes of Infinity cache for Navi 22. And so I guess with that in mind, an early thing I can say now then, going from the 128 megabytes in Navi 21 to 96, and based on the performance I've heard of, is that there's definitely some pretty rapid diminishing returns in bandwidth enhancement going down in cache size. And I guess that's really not that surprising, is it? Like, Big Navi seems like it has maybe slightly more than enough cache for 4K gaming, but it benefits it even more in 1440p. So going down to 96 megabytes, yeah, I can see why Navi 22 may not do that great at high resolutions. At least, well, it's going to be a strong card relative to previous gen cards. So it's not weak. But yeah, I don't know. And all of this kind of framing that I'm doing right now is around a lot of people that seem surprised that I said Navi 22 is unlikely to destroy the 3060 Ti. Again, I don't have an exact performance peg yet, but I'm pretty close. And I guess here's what I want to say. There's a link in the description showing like a lineup of recently benchmarked cards from Tech Power Up. So if you think it's insane for me to suggest the 6700 XT won't at least beat the 3060 Ti in raw performance, obviously I'll have more RAM. Maybe it won't beat it in raw performance. If you think that's a crazy notion, just go to the 4K information and look at where the 6800 XT lines up. Okay, so let's add 10% for where we think the 6900 XT will be, which I think is probably almost best case scenario for how much better the 6900 XT is than the 6800 XT. If you use the link in the description from Tech Power Up, you had 10%, 1.1 multiplied by what the 6800 XT gets in 4K. That's 80 compute units now. Cut it in half. Now we're to 40 compute unit 6700 XT. Look where it is on the chart. Even so, then add 20% more performance, basically assuming it scales better, basically assuming the 6700 XT is 60% as strong as the 6900 XT. It's a tad below the 2080 Super. So I don't know why this would surprise anyone when the 3060 Ti is a bit stronger than the 2080 Super, that this will be weaker. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but I've seen a lot of wild comments recently of people saying, oh, the 6700 XT, even with 40 compute units, should be 50% stronger than the 5700 XT. 50% stronger than the 5700 XT. You realize that would make it like 10% weaker than the 6800, a card with 50% more compute units than Navi 22. You think it's going to be 10% weaker than that with a third less compute units and pretty similar clocks. I don't know where your math's going, guys. So, yeah, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, the 6700 XT is maybe on the lower end of my expected performance, but that's still not a weak card. And it's really all going to come down to pricing. If the 12 gigabyte 6700 XT is, say, only 15 to 20% stronger than a 5700 XT, but it has 12 gigabytes and it's like $350, I think that's a pretty awesome card. And then the 6 gigabyte 6700 non-XT, that should be around a 5700 XT, maybe slightly weaker. If they can put that at like 250, 280, even if it just has 6 gigabytes of RAM, I don't know. That might be one of the first times I'm interested in the lower mid-range cards again. And again, don't get me started. Lower mid-range graphics cards used to be $180 when even just 4 years ago. Now they're like $300. It's not my fault. I don't know what to say. It's just this is what the prices are now. You see the 3060 Ti selling in bulk at $500. The market's spoken, guys. I don't know. It's making talking about pricing boring at this point because a lot of us are being outvoted by other people with their wallets. So it is what it is. But but again, unlike the 6800 XT, the 6900 XT that are kind of going toe to toe with Nvidia's top cards, Navi 22 really will come down to price. And if they price it cheaply enough, and again, based on the bill materials I'm seeing, AMD can make fat profits with this thing at a reasonable price. I don't know. That would make it exciting, but it really will only be exciting to me at the right price. So, all right, that is my spiel on Navi 22. Don't forget to keep hitting the like button. I see there's 1.4 thousand people watching. Hope all of you like it. What was it? Let me see. So let me move on then to another section of reader mails. This is the Xbox and PlayStation questions. Let me see. Root Knight writes in and says, in the days following the launch of the PS5, we saw a good number of reports of PS5s having various hardware or software issues. Have you experienced any of those? Do you think it's an issue with... No, I don't think there's some... Well, so, when you sell... I guess let me say this. When you sell 2 million, 3 million PlayStations or Xboxes, you can't assume there won't be a handful that have some problem. I mean... God, how many, half of Turing didn't work at launch. Go look up how the defect rate on the 2080 Ti when it came out. Yeah, some electronics have problems, but I know multiple people with PS5s and Xboxes. They all work fine. So I'm not going to play into the fanboy, weirdness of people trying to convince you they're all breaking at launch. Everything I've seen is these consoles work fine relative to other launches. So let me just open up by saying that. Second of all, when it comes to software issues, I do know someone who had a PS5 2 weeks before launch, and he said that the software was less stable then, but now it works fine. So I can't comment on the earliest things. I do know before the official launch date, there were definitely some software issues. Nothing nothing, should I say, show stopping. Like there was nothing where it's like it broke my game or I couldn't start a game. It was nothing like that. But, so I don't know. I can say that. Outside of that, there's been a few weird random things I've seen. Some of it, I haven't had any problems with sleep mode or charging the controller while it's off, or everything works fine in that regard. I had an audio thing, but it turns out I selected the wrong settings in the menu for my soundbar. Oops. So I don't know. I suspect a lot of the audio things are that, which is not entirely my fault. I would say Sony could have done a better job of explaining which setting to select. But outside of that, I don't know. Like there's been like tiny things here and there. I can't think of anything worth saying that is something that I see as a giant issue everyone's having. It's like, oh, it was weird. I restarted it because it seemed like, I don't know, the HDR wasn't working properly. Who knows if that was the TV or not, though. Games froze once. It didn't freeze, it just crashed. You don't really get freezes anymore like you did on the older consoles. They just crash the game. I haven't had any console hard crashes at all. So I guess that's all I would say is the answer is there definitely should be more updates. It's definitely new. It's a new device for sure. But it's nothing crazy, right? Little things here and there, they definitely need a patch, but no, it's been pretty smooth sailing. All right, let me see here. And again, I think a lot of the stuff I'm seeing is really nitpicky stuff. Like, I don't want to get into it there's a lot of ridiculous. I don't know. Some people are never happy unless they try to make other people unhappy. Alexander writes in and says, you kind of hinted at something in a recent podcast. Do you know anything about Starfield? I have been confirming some exclusives for both Sony, and I've heard of like one that might be an Xbox exclusive. It wasn't Starfield though. And the reason I'm not talking about Xbox exclusives is because everything I've heard of is like 3 years away, which is, I think, somewhat worrisome. Like, I don't think you buy a console to wait 3 years for exclusives to show up that are going to be on PC anyways. That's really worrisome, I would think. So, but yeah, I've heard of one, but also it's one that I'm not sure will be an exclusive. This is one of those things you don't want to double down on the Xbox side because you don't know if it actually will be an exclusive, right? They might change their mind. They've had a lot of things that they said were going to be exclusives that weren't. Some for Sony as well. So it's like when it's 3 years away, I don't know why it's worth confirming, Brandon B writes in, is this the worst console launch of all time when it comes to launch titles? No. What other launch titles have there been? There's been some, like the PS3 just basically had Resistance and like Folklore. Wasn't that game? PS2 launch titles. What the hell did the PS2 even have? Like nothing, didn't it? I guess honestly, I don't even know which one of these were actually exclusives and which one of these were on PC back then. What is there? Armored Core 2? Was that an exclusive? I don't know. I don't remember. I was younger then, but I don't remember. When I look at this list of exclusives for the PS2 and then the original PlayStation, these look horrible. Let me see. PS3 had Resistance, which was a good game, but it's like one game. I guess Genji was an exclusive too, wasn't it? The one with the historically accurate Japanese battles with giant crabs. I'm of course referencing that 2006 PS3 parody video that I thought was hilarious, making fun of the PlayStation E3 in 2006. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, all you can say about this set of launch games is it's better than last gens. Demon Souls is getting rave reviews, and it's launching with a Spider-Man game, which is getting rave reviews. And then there's all these other kids games that I don't really care about on the PS5. Let's be honest. I think this is better than last gen's launch games. Let's put it that way. Honestly, I kind of think it's kind of the perfect combo, isn't it? Am I wrong? Like what? Demon Souls for the hardcore, Spider-Man for the mainstream, and then kids games for everyone else. I think that's the perfect combination. If you're a hardcore gamer, you probably want to play Demon Souls. If not, Spider-Man's one of their best-selling franchises of all time, and they actually have one at launch. So I don't know. I think people forget that launch lineups are often, I mean, horrible in the past. There's been some really bad launch lineups. Also, isn't the worst launch lineup the Series X as it has 0 exclusives? I don't know. Let me see here. Yeah, so let's move on to general graphics card questions. Okay, general. Remember, guys, if you're tipping me, I'm not to the reader mail yet, the live Q&A. So Yoda King writes in and says, thoughts on how Navi GPUs will fare against Ampere on laptop? Look, I think that the desktop RDNA 2 chips have been pushed extra hard to compete with the 3080 and the 3090. I think once you get into the sub 100 watt space, AMD will probably have a big advantage against Nvidia, especially like the 100 to 150 watt space. I think AMD will have a massive advantage against Ampere. Having said that, it does seem like the smaller the die Nvidia makes on Samsung, a la the GA104, it seems like it's substantially more efficient than GA102. So who knows? Maybe an MX, what would it be called? MX 550 Ampere card might actually be really efficient. Who knows if like GA107, you know, like whatever they would use for like the 3040 or something, maybe that will actually be more efficient than we suspect. Maybe Samsung's Note is just horrible at big dies, and I've literally been told it is. I would just say I expect AMD to have a bigger advantage in the smaller TDP range. All right. So Chris Licata writes in and says, have you heard of any driver issues with the 6000 series? It was a huge point of contention right up to launch, but it has been quiet since. Thoughts on whether there could be obscured issues? I haven't heard any wild issues yet. And if we're being honest, when we talk about these driver things, the fact that you didn't have, I mean, what, like with like the 5000 series, the RX 5700 XT, like am I wrong? Didn't Wattman not even work in reviews? Like, so as far as we can tell, the drivers are way better this year than they were last year for launch. I mean, and I honestly think you're going to have to give it a few months before we can evaluate how good the drivers are, because you're going to have to wait for the like hundreds of thousands of cards to actually be in someone's computer for a month. And that won't happen until January. So, you know, that's what you're going to have to wait for. I'm tentatively would say it seems like it's better than the previous Radeon launch, but it's too early to say, really. Valko Malev writes in, any news on Hopper? Honestly, no, outside of what I've already told you months ago. Really, no. No new updates whatsoever. Everything seems focused on rolling out Ampere products right now. Eric Ritchie writes in, thoughts on NVIDIA's SAM implementation with Intel? You know, talking to people at AMD, I was in I don't know, it's not really a private webinar. You know, I was in a, product webinar over, and they touched on smart access memory for a while, and they even accepted Q&A. The AMD acts like it's not going to be that easy to add smart access memory to Intel products, only because it takes a lot of work with drivers, and the drivers for these motherboards are already out. Basically, the AMD engineer kind of argued they'll probably not have it until Rocket Lake, but I don't know. AMD would want you to believe that. So I think all I can say is NVIDIA is going to try to make this work. I doubt it will give you as big of a performance boost as it does on the AMD graphics cards, but I'm not 100% sure. And they already seem to be getting smart access memory working on, unlike other systems than AMD wants you to. Like right now, like they said, it only works with Zen 3 and RDNA 2. It seems like some people are already hacking smart access memory into other models. So I don't know. I would say I doubt it's going to be as easy as some people are making it out, but it seems like some other people are already hacking it in. So I don't know. I wouldn't. I think eventually we'll probably all have access to it within a year. Rafa Zaya writes in and says, wouldn't it make sense for NVIDIA AMD to have a series of cards optimized for crypto miners rather than split supply for gamers and or compute? Well, based on what I've heard, NVIDIA is selling Turing crypto mining cards directly, but at the same time, we also know they're selling Ampere dies, specifically 3080 dies, directly to mining firms. And so I would say it's smart, but that's not what Nvidia is doing. And I do know AMD does intend to split, and they are splitting up RX 5000 based mining cards with the RX 6000 series. They intentionally nerfed mining performance at a deep level, I've been told, on RDNA 2. That's why RDNA 2 only mines like 20% better than RDNA 1, despite definitely having reason to do way better. So I mean, it seems like that's AMD's approach. Having said that, the 5000 series is made on 7 nanometers, so I don't know how much that actually helps. It helps a little bit at least because you don't have miners trying to literally buy gaming cards, but I don't know. I would think that's something you should do, but the fact is you have to remember some of these mining firms have a lot of money, and so they'll pay extra to get those cards that would be on gamers. I mean, that's why Nvidia would sell them directly to miners. So, I mean, like, it's like, I think it would be smart, but is it good business sense? It's debatable. I would say it is good business sense. Nvidia disagrees and is selling cards directly to miners. Pro-consumer Nvidia. Gila Split writes in and says, any rumors about a TI version of the 3080? Yeah, I've already talked about it, I guess, and it's going to be basically a 3090, guys. I mean, come on. Kiwi Phil writes in and says, how do we see AMD combating the super-esque panic refresh that NVIDIA is looking at doing? See, let me put a timestamp here. AMD's response to TI cards. So basically what Kiwi Phil is asking is, what is AMD going to do to combat the TI refresh? And again, don't 100% take this as this is what's going to happen, because NVIDIA can change their mind. It's not, but basically what it seems like is the 3060 Ti is really cannibalizing the 3070 a lot, and they actually intend to get the 3060 Ti down to $400 by Q2. So basically what they're doing is launching an almost 3070 for $400, and then the 3070 Ti is an almost 3080 for $600 is what I've been told. And then the 3080 or 3080 Ti 20 gigabyte will be basically a 3090 for $1,000. So they're basically removing 5 to 10% performance for their entire product stack, but then also removing 20 to 30% of the price. So they don't have to admit they were wrong. How will AMD respond to this? AMD responds to this by just getting their cards to stay at MSRP, right? I don't think AMD has to worry about a $600 3070 Ti if their 6800 16 gigabyte actually hits $600. I think that'd be fine. I don't think AMD needs to worry about a $1,000 3080 Ti if the 6900 XT can hold $1,000. It's NVIDIA who's responding to AMD. The only card that seems to have surprised AMD, based on what I know, is the 3060 Ti. And again, there's some big old fat margins on RDNA 2. I think AMD can afford to undercut the 3060 Ti with a card that has more VRAM. So again, I think AMD's response to the Ti refresh that NVIDIA is doing right now is just control prices and keep doing what they're doing. If they can just get the 6800 XT to 650, they have no problems, right, with a $600 3070 Ti at all. Luke Haberman writes in and says, pre-ordered into a 3080Q, very happy with performance over my 2070 Super. My only concern is if 10 gigabytes of VRAM will be enough for 1440p gaming for the next 3 years. I've been very outspoken on this. Well, how do you define enough? This is what I keep saying. Are you going to be able to run 1440p games with the 3080 for years? Yes. Duh, of course. Will you be able to max out all settings, including textures? No, you're not going to be able to for 3 years. If that bothers you, I don't know, but that's all it is. There's a difference between enough and more than enough. And I'm just of the opinion that I'm not spending $700 for enough. When I spend $700, I want just way more than enough. And I won't be willing to upgrade my graphics card really until that's the case, because I'm just not buying into this new overinflated market. And if you are, that's fine. It's a hobby. There's more expensive hobbies. But I just, that's not me, I don't think there's going to be any situation where I don't think there's going to be any situation where Starfield comes out and the minimum requirements for VRAM are 12 gigabytes. That's not going to happen in the next few years, guys. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that there's already AAA games that say you should have 11 gigabytes or more. So just do with that information what you will. GPU NK, I guess you might say, writes in and says, not sure if you answered this before in a broken silicon or something, but after this ray tracing gimmick ends or actually becomes good, when will game developers start focusing on other, in my opinion, more important things such as physics effects, water, sand, focusing on Newtonian laws that look realistic? What if developers actually motion captured these effects the same way they captured the motion effects of characters using real life actors? Well, there have been some games that do that, actually, by the way. For example, when concrete blocks break, they can plant the motion tracking particles inside the wet concrete, and when it dries up, they can break up the concrete and use motion capture. Have been games I've seen do this, actually. I'm trying to think of I know they modeled water in like a bunch of Crytek games, and I don't know. I don't want to give examples, but yeah, I've seen I've seen a lot of games kind of model explosions with like particles and stuff, and all I can say is I think developers are going to do this now, and you're just seeing this push for ray tracing and marketing right now. I think when you look at some of the games on the consoles, what looks better, Demon Souls or Watch Dogs Legions? Watch Dogs Legions insisted on using ray tracing and running at 4K 30, and it looks like shit, and it runs like shit, and it's getting bad reviews. And then you look at other games like Demon Souls, and I keep seeing everyone say it's the best looking game so far, and I agree it is, and it doesn't have ray tracing. And Dan said this to me on Broken Silicon. What's the point of ray tracing if the games that insist on using it look worse than the other games? There are so many things we can do with horsepower that isn't ray tracing. I don't think ray tracing is a waste of time. I just think it needs to be turned on at very low levels and only a few objects, because they also point this out in some videos on Watch Dogs Legions. Like, for instance, on the Xbox Series S, for some reason, they insisted on running ray tracing on a 4 teraflop console, and the ray tracing reflections are super low resolution, and so the whole game just looks washed out. Right? If you can't do ray tracing at a high resolution, it just makes a bunch of like PS2 graphics appear in mirrors, and it looks like shit. So this is the problem. Ray tracing makes sense if it's done really well on a few objects to enhance the effects. It looks like shit if you force it on everything. And I think you're already seeing developers decide we don't need it, or we're going to use it only a little bit. And that's really all I have to say is I'm not worried about it. I think people will punish these developers, by not buying their games that run like crap. This is actually really interesting. Remember, before this console generation started, Ubisoft was saying they were going to make all their games 30 frames a second, 4K. A bunch of other people were saying that. And then out of nowhere, they decided at the last minute to make it dynamic resolution. And that's way better than locking to 4K 30 with way too much ray tracing that I think often makes the game look worse, right? If you can't do ray tracing well, it looks stupid. Right. And again, the one example I love giving also is the Battlefield 5 ray tracing demo on the 2080 Ti, where they're like, look at these ray traced mirrors. Meanwhile, the fire coming out of the tank looks like a JPEG from 2002. Like, make the fire coming out of the tank look better before you waste your time hurting my performance with ray tracing. And I think a lot of developers are coming to that conclusion. I wouldn't worry about it. All right, so let me put a timestamp there. That was apparently a pretty good ray tracing versus physics. I guess that's what I'll call it for now. All right, so general CPU questions. Let me put down another timestamp here. I probably don't need to. Garv Viginakar writes in and says, thoughts on AMD's ARM CPU's performance versus Alder Lake and M1? No. And again, M1 is based on ARM IP, but Apple sees it as their own custom architecture. So you need to think of it as an Apple chip, I think, moving forward. Versus Alder Lake, I mean, God, I don't know. I think Alder Lake could be competitive, but by the time Alder Lake comes out, Apple will have their second generation, probably, won't they? So we'll see. And AMD ARM CPUs performance. Again, you're kind of asking me to comment on something that's not out and won't be out for a while. I don't have anything to say. I will judge it when I have info or there are reviews. I don't want to speculate on things that, because I could really see anything happening. You know, AMD is a smart company. They could make something that blows us away and goes, oh, wow, this is actually, you know, as good as the M1. And at the same time, maybe they won't, you know. It's just, again, don't rule out it performing better than you'd expect. Apple isn't magical, but at the same time, Apple has $2 trillion. So also don't assume they'll do as well as Apple. It's not magic, but they do have a lot of money. All right. Final reader mail questions before I get to the live Q&A. So again, save those tips, guys. Kiwi Phil writes in, when abouts do we expect PCIe 3.0 NVMe drives to be a requirement rather than nice to have for AAA gaming? You know, it's hard to say because you can go look at games like Star Citizen and see that they technically let you play on a hard drive and it runs like crap. So when you ask me when is PCIe 3.0 NVMe drives going to be a requirement, maybe not soon, but it's going to be one of those things where it's like, I don't know, are 6 cores a requirement? No, you can game on a quad core without hyperthreading technically. I don't recommend it. And I think that's what's going to happen with SATA SSDs in about a year and a half from now. Is it's like, no, the game runs on a SATA SSD, but you get lower performance. And I legitimately think that's what's going to happen. Is it's going to be like, as we use SSDs to stream in assets quicker and swap out things to reduce performance hits, what you're going to see is they'll just say, look, you can't use high-res textures unless you have an NVMe drive. Sorry, because we can't swap them out fast enough. Or you have to use lower polygon counts because, again, we can't stream in the textures fast enough. That's what I think you're going to see. It's going to be the same as having a stronger graphics card. Stronger graphics card, more performance, turn down the settings. If you have a slower SSD, or I do think they're going to require SSDs. I don't think a hard drive will work. If you have a slower SSD, they'll just say, turn down the settings. I think that's what's going to happen. At least with most games. It wouldn't surprise me if there were some games where they require it sooner than you'd think, but I don't think most games. Tyler Tran writes in, what games have you been playing? When are you looking to upgrade your hardware? I think I've said it about a dozen times on Broken Silicon. I've been playing a lot of Deep Rock Galactic on Xbox Game Pass. Deep Rock Galactic's excellent. Play Deep Rock Galactic with your friends. It's such a fun game. Really surprised me how much I liked it. Try to think of what else on. I'm still playing Battlefield 5 every now and then. And then, yeah, I think I'm done playing State of Decay 2. We beat it like 3 times. Otherwise, it's just been a lot of Demon Souls. And I don't know what else. I don't know. Just random games, right? Like, like a lot of Demon Souls. And I'm thinking of starting Shadow of Mordor. I didn't play Shadow of Mordor right away because I heard loot boxes ruined it. But now that it's free on PS Plus, I might as well try it. And then I don't know, a little bit of Days Gone, and I don't know what else is coming out soon. Well, yeah, so a lot of Demon Souls and Deep Rock Galactic. That's what I've been playing. Okay, so let me get this here. All right, let me just double check the Patreon for if there were any last minute questions there. Let's see. Yeah, no, we're good. Let us get to the live Q&A right here. Let's just put it 44 minutes live Q&A. So now is where if you want to give me a tip, I'll try to answer it. Otherwise, I'll just answer questions I want to answer. Every now and then I'll glance at the Discord. If you're at the proper Patreon tier in the Discord, I'll see if I can answer some of those. Let's see. Gold818 writes in and says, when will games finally optimize for M.2 SSDs? Oh, yeah. Well, and he points out that Assassin's Creed Valhalla's loading times are ridiculous. They are ridiculous. They're not utilizing either console fully, and it's kind of sad. but I don't know what there is to say. It's very sad when you boot up Demon Souls and it loads an area in under a second half the time, and then you boot up Assassin's Creed Valhalla and it's 20 seconds. It's pathetic. I don't know, but it's built on an old engine, so what do you expect? I'd say a year from now. Nero Augustus writes in and says, will an overclocked 6900 XT straight up beat an overclocked 3090 in 4K? Probably on average, probably. Based on what we're seeing from overclocking, yeah, I think probably. I think a 6900 XT overclocked will just beat a 3090, except if you go above 4K or use ray tracing, which I think the 3090 will still have the edge. Gold 818, who do you think will come out on top, Amazon Luna or Google Stadia? I don't know, xCloud? Can I say none of the above? I don't know, guys. Everything I see with these streaming services is that the PlayStation 1 was good, but now it's getting old. xCloud works, but it's still not out of beta, so I wouldn't double down on that one yet. And that Google Stadia runs like crap. So I guess I would say Luna maybe beats it, but we'll see. Guys, I'm really not willing to bet on any of these streaming game services winning anything yet. I think standard, locally run games are going to be the standard for a while. I'm just not convinced for now. Evil Breadwatch writes in and says, consoles at bleeding edge nodes screwed PC in 2020. Screwed PC, making AMD a ton of money. I don't know that screwed PC at all. Nvidia is not using 7 nanometer. They're using 8 nanometer, and they have elected to sell as far as I can tell, most of GA102 directly to mining firms. This isn't Asus selling graphics cards to mining firms. Nvidia is selling dies directly to mining firms who write their own BIOSes, drivers, and commission their own PCBs and fans. Blame Nvidia. That's what makes me laugh so hard at people trying to say AMD's doing any. AMD is not selling cards directly to miners, guys. Nvidia is, and they're not using 7 nanometer. The demand issue is because of COVID, but also because Nvidia has decided to fuck gamers. And if you think it's the same to say AMD has, then you're not paying attention. This is public info. It was in their earnings. They're selling a large portion of their GA102 cards to miners, and that's why there's not enough supply. That's what screwed PC in 2020. No one planned for that. Let's see. Moore's Jawline. Thank you for the tip. Brandon, don't tell me what to do with my money. Okay, then don't ask me what to do. Let's see. Ryan Dan writes in and says, could the 3060 Ti force AMD to drop the name of their tier down to 6600 XT? That's an interesting question, right? If they would consider calling it the 6600 XT and then eventually launching I don't even know what they would launch as the 6700 XT though, right? And I don't think so. I think the 6700 XT is just probably going to be a lot weaker than the 6800. You can kind of see what AMD's doing. If you look at previous, I'm trying to think of previous lineups, right? How many, I'm trying to think. Yeah, the 3090, I have to go really far back because things have been so goofy for so long. It's hard to compare this launch to Vega because there was Vega and then there was Polaris. So this is kind of what they did with Vega and Polaris, isn't it? Think about it, right? Is this any different than what AMD's done before? Vega 64, Vega 56, and then all the way down here you had the 480 and the 470, or the 580 and the 570, I guess. That's kind of what they're doing again, making a substantially smaller die that services the lower market. And that's just not what they did with the 5700 XT. Although I guess you could argue the 5700 XT was actually a small die and they just sold it for more because they could, Also, do I need more beer? I can always use more beer, Ryan. Always use more beer. Let me see here. Okay. Let me see. Any other tip questions? I don't think so. Again, remember to hit the like button if you are watching. And hit the like button, guys. Come on. See 2,000 of you watching. Will Nvidia launch a 7 nanometer or 5 nanometer TSMC process based on GP on their consumer lineup next year? You know, it's hard to say. I think they have to launch. Well, all I can ever do is say, see, because I don't know. I don't know everything Nvidia is having to balance, right? Like I can just sit here in my chair and say Nvidia should do this, Nvidia should do that, but they have a lot more, right? Like that they're dealing with. So if you ask me, they should try to get a new lineup out as soon as possible. And I don't even think it needs to be mostly on 7 nanometer. I think it would be smarter to keep a lot of it on 8 nanometer, um, just to split up supply. Like, I think if you look at it, GA 104 is significantly more efficient than 102. And I suspect 106 will be a lot more efficient than 104. So I don't see why NVIDIA can't just do a refresh where, for example, the 4060 is just full GA 104. And maybe they give it 16 gigabytes of RAM. Like, they could just do that halfway through or late next year. And then they could launch, you know, 101 die, 103 die, whatever they want to call it, on TSMC. And they're like, this is the new, 4080, the new 4070. And then everything below this, we're just bumping things up a peg. We're just going to make the 30, the 40, or like even just like they could say, we're even just making the 4070 a 12 gigabyte GA 102. And then they could just make like a 101 on TSMC. And that's the two top cards. I think that's all they would really have to do. Of course, I don't know if they would want to redesign some of the lineup, but I really think it would be smarter for NVIDIA to put a lot of their cards still on Samsung. I just think they screwed up by putting everything on it because Samsung's node is clearly not made to make dies this big. It's just not. Like, you can tell. Look at the BOM cost for the PCB is absurd, and that's because of how unstable those dies are. You need really good power delivery on it. I'm seeing someone in the Discord say NVIDIA is going to jump to TSMC as soon as possible either way. I think they're going to try to, but you've got to remember AMD, I believe this is official now, right? Isn't it? Let me look. Let's Google it. AMD top customer TSMC. I believe this is literally true now. Let me see. I think this literally happened a week ago or something. Yeah. AMD is expected to become, is from 8 hours ago. AMD is expected to become TSMC's number one customer for the first time, right? So, AMD is their number one customer, guys. Like, you have to remember that AMD is becoming a juggernaut. So, while I believe NVIDIA will try to jump to TSMC as soon as possible, and they are for some products, they're already buying up 5 nanometer capacity. AMD is in pretty tight with TSMC. It's not as easy as just booking it when AMD is their number one customer. AMD's got preference. And AMD's got so many different products that TSMC can go, oh, we need to fill up this capacity, make more PS5s or whatever, and they can. Nvidia can't do that. Nvidia's not supplying as many, AMD's really got some leverage there with how many different products they're making. Osiris writes, and when do you think we will get new generation laptops? Well, they're launching now. I mean, I just got a studio laptop. Yes, it's Intel and Nvidia. Surprise people. I don't care. I just buy the best product. When will we? I think you're already seeing Cezanne leaks though. So they're launching new laptop lineups every couple quarters, and there's already one going out now. I would just say you're going to see new laptops with fully new products in quarter two. Because I don't know, if I was HP, I would want to wait for Cezanne and mobile Ampere and RDNA 2 to be ready. But they might not. You're going to see some. You're probably still going to see plenty of 1650s with Cezanne, to be honest. So I don't know. I would, and you also got to keep in mind though that AMD has massive supply issues with Renoir right now. So they're trying to. It's not that simple, I guess is what I would say as well. Tossed a Q over on Patreon. Let me copy this link, put it in the description. How far away do you think games are from photorealism? Oh, I think we'll see photorealistic games this generation. I just don't know that they're going to be I doubt they're going to be like open world games like Red Dead Redemption or Cyberpunk. I think you're going to see some walking simulators or Heavy Rain, Detroit Become Human, Until Dawn type games that are pretty much photorealistic this gen. I think we got the performance to get there. Let's see. Do I revise my opinion on AIB paper launch? They're selling cards, guys. You just didn't get one. So it's not my fault you didn't. Bobus32 commentary writes in and says, MLID, do you think AMD will try to move Ryzen to 5 nanometer as soon as possible to open up more wafers for Navi? And do you see that AMD is 1/12 of the total income of TSMC next quarter? Yeah, I mean, that's what I was just saying. AMD is the number one customer of TSMC, or just about now. Do you think you'll try to move Ryzen to 5 nanometer? Well, I believe Zen 4 will be 5 nanometer, first of all. And I also would not be surprised if there was a Zen 3 Plus, which is just effectively the IO die from Zen 4, and then Zen 3 on 5 nanometer with higher clocks or more efficiency, whatever. It does sound like there could be an AM5 Zen 3 Plus launch around mid to late next year, probably right next to Alder Lake, like that. And it really does sound like Zen 4 is kind of slipping to 2022. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, Bobus, I would just say I did see that AMD is like their number one customer now, and I do think AMD will try to move a lot of Ryzen to 5 nanometer as soon as possible. And I think TSMC wants to move them there. I see a lot of people saying like TSMC is controlling AMD. It's like, well, I think AMD's happy to be the first on 5 nanometer as well, guys. I don't think it's like it's like AMD, like, oh no, they're making us move to 5 nanometer. I think AMD's happy to move to 5 nanometer, first of all. Yeah, I don't know. Not really much else to add to that. Pedro Blaso writes in and says, how long will current gen GPUs be able to keep 4K 60? I think the resolution argument's starting to get a little outdated. With the dynamic resolutions, I think as long as it's above 1440p in slow-moving scenes, it stays close to 4K. And fast-paced scenes, we have bullets flying past your head, it's above 1440p. I doubt you notice the resolution change. And honestly, something I've noticed in Deep Rock Galactic on PC, if you turn on TAA and then run the resolution scale a little lower, it's very hard to tell the difference between that and full 4K. Honest to God, it's hard to tell, especially when you're actually playing, not just like counting pixels in the corner. And I think that's what they're saying they're doing with a lot of console games. There's like an injected TAA in the final image after the dynamic resolutions run. It's very hard to tell the difference. I think what I would say is I like my games above 1440p. I like my games at or above 60. But as long as they are, it's getting hard to tell the difference, guys. Like if you have a dynamic resolution at 100 hertz that's close to 1800p, you guys got to stop pixel counting and just, can you play your games? Can you enjoy games? Like that's a problem I'm starting to have more and more now. It's like I'm having fun playing all of these games this fall, and people are just like, yeah, but can I run it at 10% higher resolution? It's like, yeah, I'm going to go play this game because it's fun. And I think people are really just not remembering that right now. Any indicatives on Cyberpunk performance? I mean, don't we have Cyberpunk recommended specs and they're not even that high, right? Recommended specs. Let me look. Yeah, this question comes from Pedro Blaso. So, like, what? The recommended specs for Ray Tracing Ultra is a 3080, not even a 3090. So, I don't know. We have to assume that Cyberpunk, isn't, telling you what settings you'll get to run at 30 hertz. I assume they mean 60. But I mean, when I look at ultra or look at high settings 1440p, 5700 XT, I don't know. It seems like things should run fine. Having said that, they delayed this game a few times, so we'll just have to see. They're gonna have to prove it, but I'm guessing it's gonna run fine on most things. Gene writes in and says, are the inflated MSRPs on AIB 6000 cards caused by AIBs themselves? Yes. That's why the reference cards are selling for close to MSRP, or at least when they're not on the used market, they are. Yeah, look, go look. The reference cards are selling close to MSRP, and AMD's been, at least I've been told, AMD's been very clear to AIB is if you use our reference cooler, you will not mark up this card. It's AIB's making up for the shipping right now. Basically, if you buy an AIB card, whether it's the 3060 Ti or Big Navi, you're basically paying extra. There's like $30 there that might be the cooler, but then there's like $50 to $100 that's the shipping. And again, people will say, well, expedited shipping is really only like $20, $30 more. And it's like, yeah, but there's only so many planes. Again, I covered this in the 3060 Ti shuffle. They have to bid way more than usual for the smaller amount of flights that are going on right now to ship their cards. This is all public information. This is not inside even. People are just not paying attention to what's going on with COVID right now. Fart, booty, dookie, breath. Okay. Whatever comes to mind, wrote in something that is definitely seems like a random thought that just came to mind. Mexi Man and Cheese writes in, do you think the next generation of graphics cards will be so power hungry and temperamental about power delivery? As far as I've seen, Big Navi doesn't seem to have as much as that stuff. I don't know though. I think anything made on TSMC will be more stable than anything made on Samsung or even Global Foundries. If you look at the original Vega launch, like go look at reviews of Vega 64 Liquid. That card had amperage spikes that were like nuts. TSMC makes much more consistent, how do I put it? Like voltage regulated dies. So I think it just depends on how big the card is and how stable the node is. Nvidia decided to make massive dies on an unstable node that's meant for making smartphone chips, and people are surprised it uses a boatload of energy. Like, I think that's what it is. That's what it is, So it just depends. Will Nvidia use Samsung again? They'll probably have some pretty crazy power delivery requirements. But again, I think they should have always made their top cards at TSMC. I just think they couldn't. Nova writes in and says, had a 3080 on order from a retailer since launch in Australia. Still haven't gotten it and stopped caring. I'm just here for the views. Yeah, again, so I want to just highlight that again. This guy has a pre-order from September from Nvidia that still has not been filled. It hasn't even been a month since Big Navi launched, and people are comparing them. It's ridiculous. Some people just have no concept of relativeness. Like, my God, guys, you're comparing less than a month of a launch during the worst COVID spike to a September launch where this guy still hasn't gotten his pre-order card. If you don't see the difference between those two launches, you're not very good at judging info. Like, honestly. Judge Wu writes in and says 6900 XT versus the 3090 in 1080p. At 6900 XT, right? I mean, look, RDNA 2 is better at handling lower resolutions. So I don't know why you'd buy any of these cards for 1080p. I mean, what frame rates are you going to get in 1080p with a 6900 XT? Like 6,000? Like, I don't know. I don't think I would get it. I wait. I don't think. I know I wouldn't get it. Don't buy it. Like, really? That's like, no. No. Lars Hansen writes in and says, have you heard about the rumor of a PlayStation 5 Lite coming out in second half of 2021? I have not. Let me see. Rumor. Might release 13 hours ago. Let's see what this guy. I'm just looking at this live. I haven't seen this yet. This was written by Lars Hansen. Sony might release a cheaper, smaller PS5 called the PS5 Lite. I mean, if it's on 5 nanometer, why not? It wouldn't surprise me. And I know they're manufacturing the PS5 disc at like a 4-to-1 ratio compared to the PS5 digital. It wouldn't surprise me if the current PS5 digital is kind of a temporary thing. And then they just die shrink it and focus on the digital version late next year. That would actually make a lot of sense to me. But no, I don't know anything about this on my end, but I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out. It would be interesting too if they split up the manufacturing between two nodes for the PS5. That'd be wild. Let me see here. Blah, 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 blah. Lots of people arguing about consoles as usual in the comments. Somebody got Cyberpunk early by accident and was saying the combat is really good. Cool. We'll see. I got Loki72 writes in, I got a 3080 for $800. How much did I get screwed? Not more than most people. Most people paid at least that much, I think. Raphael Dabrowski writes in and says, been watching you for almost a year and finally caught a live stream to tip. His question, do you think the 3060 Ti will be a good value card in Q1 at MSRP? Let me see. 3060 Ti. Let me just write down a timestamp. And the answer is, well, I wouldn't call it a value card, right? Watch my 3060 Ti video. I'm going to have to add that as a link in the description. Apparently, I've just been referencing it nonstop. But I don't think it, like, if you look at the 5700 XT, that launched for $400 a year and a half ago. But for like the past year, the 5700 XT has often been found below 400. Obviously not during this holiday shopping season. Nothing is. But it was like, what? Like, I remember one point, I think late last year, or not, I think it was early. I think it was early this year. I was seeing 5700 XTs go for $360, $380. And the 3060 Ti is a little stronger than a 2080 Super. So what can we say? Well, I mean, it seems like the 5700 XT is aging very well, so let's be fair. But let's just say that the 3060 Ti is about 20 to 25% better than the 5700 XT. So a year and a half later, we have a new $400 card that's 20 to 25% better. That's not special. Every year and a half, you should get something 20 to 30% better. Frankly, I would hope you should get something 50% better. Those were the good old days. But so I don't think at $400, the 3060 Ti is a great value. I think it's expected, but I do think it's not bad. I do think if the 3060 Ti hits $400, especially if it gets below 400, and I think it might, not in a month, but probably in like 4 months, I think it's a decent card. I think the 3060 Ti, I think the 3070 doesn't, I think the 3070 should have more than 8 gigabytes, but that's because it's over $500. That's because most 3070s are selling for $600. And it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like almost 4 years ago, there were 1080 Ti's you could sometimes get for almost that price with 11 gigabytes. This is ridiculous. 8 gigabytes, I don't think is enough for a high-end card. And whether you like it or not, they're selling the 3070 right now for high-end prices. However, a 3060 Ti is only like 10% weaker, and then it gets to around 400. I think 8 gigabytes is okay below $400. I do. So I think the 3060 Ti will be a solid 1440p card if it gets below 400. I just don't think it is at 500 or higher, which again, they almost sold it for like 580, which was just insane or insane. Again, watch that video, folks. Let me pull that up too and put that as a link in the description. Let me see here. Got some more tips. Whatever comes to mind writes in and says, do you think AMD smart maybe he means smart access memory could be something that is utilized on older GPUs? That is what he's talking about, as it doesn't actually seem to be proprietary to a combo of system hardware. Well, I think with smart access memory, AMD found it probably works really well with Big Navi, because Big Navi, I mean, they talk about this, you know, it allows you to access more of the memory on the graphics card at once. And Big Navi is 16 gigabytes. Additionally, Zen 3 is really low latency and PCIe 4.0. So I think PCIe 4.0, Zen 3, and Big Navi play to the strengths of smart access memory. But as far as I'm aware, there's no reason they couldn't put that on most older hardware or a lot of it. So what I would say is it probably is best you'll probably get the biggest enhancement on the things AMD is limiting it to. But it does seem like an artificial limitation that could benefit older hardware. And I hope, again, how the tables turn now that AMD is competitive, I hope Nvidia does make an open source solution finally. That works really well, because it just kind of does seem ridiculous, in my opinion, that it's not on older hardware. And I lean towards that being a temporary thing, that AMD is just trying to have some extra reason to make you want to buy their newer products, which is what happens when you become a big boy, I guess. They just all get a little greedy. Karsh Iditha writes in and says, I use the 5700 XT in 6-year-old eGPU setup. Okay. And a 6 years old. Maybe he means a 6-year-old's eGPU setup. I don't know. Paying to upgrade to PC. Confused between the 3700X or 5600X. Which one is better? I would lean towards the 5600X, especially if they're the same price. However, it's kind of like, it's like if you go back to last year, a lot of people were recommending the R5 3600. And I said, look, the R5 3600 is a great CPU. It games really well, and it's worth the money at 200 or 250. But the 2700X, the previous Gen 8 core, was selling for like half the price sometimes. The 2700X was selling for 150 or less, and high numbers last holiday season. You can't even get it for that little anymore, unfortunately. And so anytime there's a previous gen CPU with a couple more cores, if it's way less money, I'd recommend that. In other words, I would recommend the 3700X over the 5600X if it's less than 200. But honestly, the 5600X is like really good at gaming. So I do think it's worth the extra $50 or whatever over the 3700X most of the time right now. But we'll just have to see where prices stabilize, because right now it's almost academic. Right now there's used 2060s selling for $350 when that was their launch price, and that's just absolutely ridiculous. It's kind of hard to give any advice right now. Let's see. Yep, so another one. Indriju writes in, what will happen to the Intel Foundry if it gets split off like Global Foundries? Oh, well, I mean, it will be utilized. I mean, look, guys, most things don't need the newest node if you look it up. So that's all there really is to say. What if it merges with Samsung or Global Foundries? I don't know. I don't know why. I really don't have much to say. Like, why would it? Why would they need to do that? I don't know. Nothing really. I have nothing to say. Like, if Intel spun off some of their foundries, which they have a lot of foundries, by the way, it's not like it's like one. If Intel sold one of their foundries to Samsung, all I have to say is, I guess that foundry will probably be making HBM soon or something for Samsung. Like, I don't think there's much to add. Alexander Keljins writes in, for 1440p, where do you think the sweet spot is going to be for the coming releases? Well, I mean, what frame rates are you wanting to game at? I think it depends on what Navi 22's price is. If Navi 22 comes in below 350, I think that's it, baby. I think you want that. Turn down a few settings and you're getting something that does everything for a reasonable price. Otherwise, it's like, does the 3060 Ti go below $400? Well, then I kind of recommend it, actually, for 1440p. Does the 3070 go below 500? Probably not. Does the 6800 eventually get below 600? Well, I mean, I guess it is if you get a reference card, but does the 6800 ever get below its MSRP? I don't know that that's the sweet spot for 1440p, but if the 6800 ever got close to 550, I'm just going to recommend that because it would give you mind-blowing 1440p performance. So I think the sweet spot right now is whatever you can fucking buy, because you can't get anything, but easily at least. But in the future, I would just say the 3060 Ti will work really well below 400, and Navi 22 would be what I'd recommend if it is below 350. But then, of course, if any of the high-end cards get cheaper, well, then you have to evaluate that. Again, it's so hard to say. It's almost like an academic question at this point because it's so hard to get everything. Sandra Tergersen writes in, what do you think of influencers more often getting paid by companies to promote their products, and what do you think can be done about it? Well, I think you could be a smarter consumer, but it's really the buck stops at us. It's up to us to use influencers as entertainment more so than as advice. And I don't know that there is much you can do about it besides do that. Like I haven't received a single graphics card or processor from any of these companies, and it's because I talk so much shit about all of them. And I don't think I ever will receive these products. So if you want to support free thought, you have to support people that are supporting free thought. And that's really all it comes down to. Like, actually, a funny example I know of is I know there's this podcast called Sacred Symbols. It's a PlayStation podcast. I think it's the #1 PlayStation podcast, technically by numbers. And it's been blacklisted by Sony because half the time they're talking shit about Sony. And it's just, if you want to support people that speak their mind freely, that you've got to support them. And it's just up to you. It's up to you. Do you want people who do that to thrive or not? I don't know. Osiris writes in and says, I just want a laptop with a 3080. Well, I hope you're ready for it to be really big. I travel so much and I want the performance. I think you've got to make, you've got to accept sacrifices if you want portability. Again, give me 1 second. I'll get it. It's right here. So this is a newer laptop that I believe just launched. It's the HP Studio NV15. Here you go. And, it's got a 6-core i7 that stays clocked. It has a vapor chamber cooler. So it actually stays clocked at above 4 gigahertz, even at full throttle. Like, it's running all 6 cores, all 12 threads, above like 4.4 gigahertz most of the time. And it's got a 2060. And after, I can't really undervolt it, but after overclocking the memory of the 2060, look, guys, I can play any game with this 2060 laptop at 1440p 60, and it has an OLED screen, so it looks super sharp, even at reduced resolutions. There's no game I can't play. I can play Battlefield 5 almost in 4K on this laptop. No, I cannot play at 4K 120 on this thin laptop. But do you need to? I think you buy a laptop to be able to be portable first and then to get to the level of performance you need. And I just can't see, I think there will be decent 3060, 6700 XT, maybe even some 3070 Max Q laptops. And I think that those are still tremendous performance. For what a laptop does. And I think at the end of the day, is that not enough? This is the laptop I used to edit that one video when I was in Nashville a few weeks ago. It works. No, it's not as smooth as my 3950X and Radeon 7, but it does everything I need it to, and it was a reasonable price. The only other option you're going to have is like $3,000 Razer laptops that, do they actually do anything extra for spending double the money of a laptop that, instead of having like a 3070 or 3080, has like a 3060? I don't know. I just think that's worth pointing out. If the question is when do you want this level of performance in a portable laptop, I think you're going to have to wait for RDNA 3, right? So you write that down as a timestamp. Okay. Let me keep scrolling down. What else do we got here? What forever comes to mind? I subscribed. Here's $5. Now I can't pay my rent. I hope don't support me unless you have the money, though. Although I doubt $5. I hope $5 wasn't the difference. Grew up with a guy. Wait, what's this? Girlfriend broke up with for a guy that owns a PS5. I'm ugly and proud. I hope. I'm having a hard time believing someone broke up with you because some other guy had a PS5. That sounds kind of insane. But hey, man, look. All I can say is I've really come to appreciate with how rough this year has been and all the drama this fall. Like the things that give me entertainment. Like, I love Your Mom's House and like H3, and Tim Dillon. And I know a lot of people will be surprised I like all three of those. You know, like all I can say is you don't need the newest stuff. There's stuff out there to enjoy. There's many ways to get games cheaply. You don't need the newest consoles. I recommend them sometimes, but you know, it's like, I don't know. Just don't forget that even if you don't get the newest stuff, that there's still so much stuff out there for free. Like, you know, and I don't know. Just remember that. I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know how to respond sometimes to say, hey, man, I've gone through rough patches as well. Marcos de Pauzo Corral writes, and it says, your information on Silent Hills and Metal Gear has had an impact. Okay. I'm glad it did after a bunch of people spammed the comments about unrelated stuff while I was trying to talk about Alder Lake and Metal Gear Solid in episode 77 of Broke 70. Was it 77 or 76? 76 of Broken Silicon. Again, also, by the way, just a quick plug. Listen to 76 and 77 of Broken Silicon. 76 had on a game researcher who helped make decisions in how they design AAA games. I can't say which studio he worked at, but it was a fascinating conversation of translating what gamers want in their games to developers programming them. That's the type of conversation a lot of people have been begging me for, and there it is. Don't forget to listen to that. You know, that's 77. And then 76, I think, was one of the best Tom and Dan episodes ever, despite it coming out while everyone was complaining about availability. So don't forget that. To go directly to your question, Marcos, asking about games being announced, I know what's being worked on for, well, I can't say I know everything. There's so much going on with these companies right now. I'm not going to pretend I know everything, but I know of multiple games being worked on at Sony and Xbox, and I've revealed the ones I'm confident in. And that's all I have to say. I can't promise you they're going to reveal things, you know, at a specific date, because they could decide not to. It's not up to me when they reveal these things. And you have to ask yourself what the point is of revealing anything when they can't even meet demand, right? What's the point of Sony revealing more exclusives when they can't even deliver enough consoles? It doesn't seem like they're having any trouble selling them. You'd almost want to wait to reveal games when demand slows down. So I can't promise anything, but I do know what they're working on. And no one's more excited for a new Metal Gear Solid and Silent Hills than me. Eric Ricci writes in, is SOCOM a PlayStation exclusive this gen? I mean, look, all I can say is I've heard that there's probably another SOCOM in the works, but I have no info on dates or studios. I have nothing 100% confirmed. So if I was 100% sure of this, I would have told you guys by now. I was able to get a 6800. Should I even bother for an XT? I don't think so. Why? The 6800 is a good card. I think it just depends what you want to do with your graphics card too, right? The RX6, I think a lot of people are sleeping on why the 6800 is a decent graphics card, right? Like, I know that the 6800 XT is like 15% stronger for 15% more money or whatever. But at the same time, the 6800 non-XT has no issues with 4K 60 or 1440p 120. So you almost got to ask, what are you doing with the extra 10% performance? Are you actually doing anything with it? I don't know. That's why the 6800 is an interesting graphics card. Now, the second they start selling it for 700, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend really any graphics card at 700. I just think it gets too expensive when you're spending the price of 1.5 consoles for one high-end graphics card. But I don't know. You know, I think the 6800 is fine. I have a hard time believing you're not going to be running any new games well on a 6800. The thing's like 20% stronger than a 2080 Ti with 50% more RAM. The thing's a beast. I think you'll be fine. I'd just be happy you got one. The word donor writes in 3950X versus 5900X for productivity tasks. I would lean towards the 5900X if they are the same price. Right. I would lean towards the 5900X just for that extra snappiness. Let's see. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see here. Could you please talk about 5950X availability? There's more 5950Xs this quarter than there were 3950Xs last year. That's the truth, guys. Even if you can't get one. I got the 57 over the 5700 XT. Yeah, a lot of people said the same thing about the 5700 XT, that it was better value than the 5700. It really wasn't better value. It was equal value, and one's cheaper, and they both do 1440p well. So it's like, again, is the 6800 weaker than the 6800 XT? Yes. Is it still going to crush 4K 60 gaming? Yes. And it's cheaper. I think people mostly buy a card to meet certain needs, and that's why the price is somewhat close to the 6800 XT. And I keep getting spammed with Bloodborne PC. I've heard that it's like 90% probably real, but I can't tell you anything besides Bloodborne PC there. What I can say is that there's a $400 console you can play Bloodborne on right now, and if you don't want to wait years to play the same game. Again, that's just what bothers me. It's just like, well, what about this $800 card? What about this $800 card? What about that $800 card? When's Bloodborne coming to PC? You're asking me about these $800 products when you can play this game right now for half the price. I don't know. Cyberpunk looks good on PS5, even though it's not photorealistic. I hope it's got good gameplay. People keep harping about graphics. I hope it has good gameplay. Oh, TX 850 PSU versus RMA. Well, it's EVGA, so I don't recommend it. So I'm going to stop right there. Tom, I want to fight you. Okay. Get in line. Let's see. Do you watch the Game Rewards Awards? Any juicy predictions? I think I've already said that I somewhat expect there to be exclusives shown off. And of course, there's going to be new there will be some new games shown off. There are every Game Awards. Wait, yeah, I don't even need a source to say that, do I? So, crazy predictions. Some game will be revealed at the Game Awards, right? Like, so any juicy predictions? I would give it at least 50-50. They're going to show off a Sony exclusive, even though they really don't need to. Hades is my game of the year. Yeah, I know some people like that game. Well, let me see what's going on in the Discord if there's no more tick questions. I also believe someone said something here. Remember that you could have asked all those questions for free if you were a patron. Just plug in the Patreon one more time. That's what pays the bills. Which, again, I have an audio engineer and Dan that's getting paid. So it's not me, really. Well, it's not just me. You're really, like, when you look at the Patreon numbers, that's paying 3 people. Ivan Cole Bob UK writes in, when do you think we will see more games that need 16 gigabytes in 4K and 10 gigabytes in 2K? Well, here's the funny thing about the VRAM constraints that's kind of annoying me. I remember when Titan Maxwell came out, and Titan Maxwell had, of course, 12 gigabytes of VRAM. And I remember Shadow of Mordor had 12 gigabyte textures. Then all of a sudden, NVIDIA launches an 11 gigabyte card, and then an 8 gigabyte 2080, and now a 10 gigabyte 3080. And so devs are kind of stagnating with their texture resolutions on PC because these high-end cards aren't increasing VRAM. So when will we see games that need 16 gigabytes? Again, what do you mean by need? No game's going to require 16 gigabytes of VRAM, but there will be games that have high-res textures within a couple of years for sure. And I mean, even go look at Digital Foundry's analysis of the PS5 versus the PC, and you'll see they're already starting to do this thing on next-gen consoles where they have higher res textures, more objects on stream. Like, this limited VRAM thing starting to fuck PC gamers, and I'm starting to get tired of it. Like, we've been stagnated on 8 to 10 gigabytes for way too long, and it's getting ridiculous. So at least AMD gave us enough VRAM this gen so that developers will hopefully actually give us better graphics. Because all we've really been getting is higher frame rates. You want higher res textures, tell NVIDIA to stop skimping on VRAM because they control most of the market. Like, developers aren't going to program games for the $2,000 3090. They need there to be 12 gigabyte cards below 400. They need there to be 16 gigabyte cards below 1,000. Any information on Xbox exclusives? You only reveal Sony exclusives. Well, then tell Xbox to actually make some fucking exclusives and I'll reveal them. They're not. I can't make Xbox make enough games, you know. Blackbird writes in, where are my new APUs? I think Saison set to launch in Q2, by Q2. Zemos writes in, even though we're 1 to 2 years away, what are you more excited for, RDNA 3 or Hopper? Let me think here. I don't know. I'm tempted to say RDNA 3 because I have, for some reason, my gut says that they'll launch RDNA 3 more on time, but I don't know for sure. I really can't answer that question well. Someone asked about GTA 6. I mean, I've already talked about GTA 6. It's in development. It's apparently huge. Don't expect it to come out soon. That's really all there is to say. I don't see any questions from patrons in the after video chat. Well, let me say this. I might give it another 10 minutes, but if the comments slow down a little more, I might just wrap it up soon. You know, I think I've covered most things from this month. I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, we'll cover most of the stories in Broken Silicon. So I guess this is last call for tip questions then. If because otherwise I think I've covered most of it. Thomas Sally writes in, I have a feeling Navi 21 is going to be used again with a 52 CU. I mean, look, never say never. Maybe AMD will cut down Navi 21 further, but you guys, the 6800 is like really cut down, like way more than usual. Go look at like Radeon 7, right? And that professional Vega 20 lineup. They only removed 4 compute units on a die in 2018. They don't need to cut down these cards much. From the way I see it, the 6800 is cut down like 20% or so, 25%, and not just 10%, so that they can ensure they can use every die. I think the 6800 is that lowest crazy cut down die already. And I think the 6800 XT, there should be plenty of room for plenty of those. Again, you know, look at 6800 is already really cut down. You know, I don't think they have a need to go down much more than that. I have a question here about a new portable PlayStation. Yeah, I don't know. Sony hated the Vita, so we'll see. It's hard for me to answer any questions about that. I would say any portable console that isn't Nintendo should be more of a smartphone combination console. I don't think having a standalone console makes as much sense. Could be wrong, though. The Switch is selling crazy well. So maybe I'm just, maybe I just don't know. Do I have any opinions on the future of VR? I mean, yeah, it's here to stay and it will keep getting more mainstream, but it's not mainstream yet. Rogue XS, considering both the Xbox and PlayStation are making mid-gen consoles frequently. Frequently? What do you mean frequently? They've done it once. This is hilarious. Considering Sony and Microsoft always make mid-gen refreshes, you mean they've done it one gen? So you have one data point. They did it once, guys. They usually make a slimmer version of the console, but you can't always assume they do a Pro. What are the odds they would build it on RDNA 3? Honestly, I think the Xbox is going to make Pro versions, but it's not going to be Pro. I think there's a reason Xbox has called their console the Series X, Series S. I think Microsoft will say this is the 2022 edition of the Series X. They'll just say it like a car. This is the 2022 model year of the Xbox. I think that's what Microsoft is going to do. And I think Sony is considering just launching the console gen sooner. Like, didn't the last gen consoles come out in 2013? So it's been 7 years. Like, that's kind of crazy. Like, there's like, if you were to ask me, right, I think people are going, well, why don't they just either stick to having one console or stick to the smartphone model of a new console every year or 2 years? I would say, why can't we do something in the middle? If you were to ask me, like if I were giving advice to Sony, for example, I would say, and again, I'm just some asshole in the chair, but if you were to ask my opinion, I would say what I think you should do is instead of waiting 7 years to launch a new console, and instead of launching a Pro every 3 years, why don't you just make a new gen every 4 to 5 years, right? Because I like new generations with new features that really, really try to make the best of the newest stuff. I would think just launch a PS6 in 2024, right? Just in 4 years, launch a new console on RDNA 4. Why do a Pro on RDNA 3 in a couple of years when you can just wait only 4 years and do one on RDNA 4 that's like 2, 3, 4 times better? Just do that. And who knows what other technology they'll be able to put in there. Maybe ray tracing will be ready. Instead of waiting 7 years for RDNA, 1000, just wait 4 years when ray tracing and VR are fully ready and do a PS6. That's what I think they should do. I think obviously though, Xbox is doing it every 2 to 3 years thing. So I just think it's different, strategies. That's what I would recommend. And I think that the every 2 years thing could be a slippery slope, but if done correctly, I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I just have a problem with you developing for something that's 10 years old. I think it's just better to have a new gen every 4 to 5 years. I don't know. Because otherwise you're going to hold back graphics. I think that's what you're seeing on some consoles right now, is that the support for the older gen is holding back performance pretty obviously. Blah Data writes in and says, demand is higher now for tech in the industry new this year, yet all tech is overpriced. No, they did not know there was going to be a pandemic, guys. The demand is, there's multiple reasons demand is out of whack right now. I mean, there's a pandemic, and then that's causing shipping issues, but then also people are stuck inside during a giant spike. And I think people are tired of just watching Netflix. So they're like, you know what? This is the perfect Christmas season for me to catch up on gaming. And so everyone's buying more gaming products. I don't think there was any way the industry could plan for this. And I think they've done their best. Honestly, I think everyone's pretty much done their best for the most part. And we should just be happy these products actually came out this year. and it's actually, let me add this too, Blah-dee-da, which is a funny name. When you talk about undersupplied, they're manufacturing more Xboxes and PlayStations than they were last gen. So they're supplying more than before. So they are planning ahead. It's just still sold out. I don't know. Again, it's like, I don't know what to tell people. You didn't get something. Demand is insane and there's shipping problems. I don't know what to say. I just don't know how many times I got to say the same thing. Bob Tish writes in, any news on the 3080 Ti? Already talked about it, man. Again, actually, I think this is what I'm going to start saying about the 3080 Ti, because I think this is the funniest thing. The 3090 is 10% stronger than the 3080. How strong do you think the 3080 Ti is going to be? Close to both of them. It'll probably have more VRAM. That's all there is to say. Jason Wilson says mic drop. Yeah. I'm known for a lot of those. How much of supply is being bought up by bots? Too many, right? Like it's ridiculous. Like, I don't know what else there is to say about bots. I guess let me add a timestamp about, because I do have a little bit to say about scalpers. Like, there's always been scalpers. And I'm going to be honest. I don't have a problem with someone, trying to get a hold of an Xbox Series X. They get a hold of two, and then they sell one of them for $600 or $700. There's nothing wrong with that. Someone got an extra one. They're going to sell it because the market will pay more for it. I have a problem with these bot farms and conglomerates of scalpers stockpiling thousands of consoles, because that is a bigger problem than just a launch period. See, this is a huge problem moving forward, because if they're stockpiling, like, what did they say? They have like 4,000 PS5s and like 2,000 Xboxes. What's to stop them from doing this all next year? Like, what's to stop them from stockpiling 100,000 PlayStations? What's to stop them from stockpiling every new graphics card that comes out? Something has to be done about scalpers, not just because it's bad this fall, but because with how many they're starting to stockpile them. what? Like, that's going to become out of hand any year if they keep doing this. Having said that, I could see this massively backfiring on them, massively, because look, I don't know what to tell you guys. If you've tried really hard to get a console, at least in America, it's been possible. It has been possible. You know, like I think what was it? So I think like Nvidia has manufactured like almost 500,000 cards by the end of this year, selling about half of them to miners, by the way. Thank you, Nvidia. And AMD's started manufacturing them about a month, 2 months ago, and they should manufacture about 150,000 by the end of this year. All of those being big Navi, of course. So when I talk about like 500,000 from Nvidia, that's GA 104 and 102, and they've been making them for twice as much time. You know, and then there's like 1 million Zen 3s by the end of this year, or a little more than that. So with all of that in mind, there's been like 4 million PS5s so far, and like 2 million Xboxes, I think. Over 1 million Xboxes for sure. So with that in mind, right, it's a lot easier to get the consoles. And at the same time, they're continuing to manufacture more. It wouldn't surprise me. I almost lost track of what I was saying. It wouldn't surprise me with how many of these consoles they're making. And you can look it up. AMD keeps buying up more capacity to make more of these consoles. If the scalpers bought like 10,000, but then they manufactured 20 million consoles, you know, 3,500 is a lot, but it's like what then? Like 1% of 3.5 million. It wouldn't surprise me if these scalpers got so good at buying them up, but then they bought up too many, and then by Q1 prices normalized because you could get them easily in stores, and then the scalpers were just screwed and basically forced to sell all of their consoles at cost. That's what I hope happens. But yeah, something needs to be done about scalpers, or I don't know what would stop scalpers from doing this, even away from launch periods. Yeah, so that's my rant that I almost lost track of while I was talking. That was close. Risky B81 writes, a news about bots has only served as an ad for them. Kind of. I don't know. I don't know that many people buying the scalped consoles, though. And I think there's, like, you saw Amazon or whoever it was. It wasn't the Amazon. I think it was a UK retailer canceled all of those Xbox Series X orders. So I don't think talking about the scalpers is helping them, really. I think it's just making people want to kill them more. I don't know. Yeah, and that's the thing. What happens if their price, someone says don't even buy them if they're at MSRP? What happens if the scalpers, have too much inventory and then people still refuse to buy from their website next year? They would end up losing a lot of money. So I would just say these scalpers are playing a dangerous game, and it could backfire on them. Psychedelic Snail in the Discord, which again, if you guys support us on Patreon, you can ask these questions for free. He says, hey, Tom, is it better to upgrade my 2600X to a 5900X or upgrade the video card? I game at 1440p and 4K. Well, definitely the video card then, right? And again, it's like people keep saying, am I going to need a stronger CPU because of the consoles? Well, not right now. Not right now. The 2600X is probably enough for 60 hertz gaming in every game. So as long as you're just doing 60 hertz, definitely the graphics card. Okay, let me see here. All right, so I did manage to talk another 15 minutes, it looks like. Any last minute tips here? Yoda King, Yoda King writes in from Patreon, have you thought about doing more beginner level video tutorials? For instance, a video about graphic settings in a variety of games. Honestly, Yoda King, look at how many videos I'm putting out. What did I do last week? I talked about the 3060 Ti and availability. I put out a 2.5 hour podcast. And then I also put out a 6700 XT League, and I'm just doing a 2-hour live stream right now. I do videos I have time for. At this point, it's basically whack-a-mole in the amount of things I can talk about, Yoda King, to be honest. Like, people keep saying, have you considered doing a video about this? Yeah, keep the suggestions coming in, but I'm basically doing as many as I can. Nori SS writes in, can you connect your Patreon direct so you don't have to deal with bots? I don't know what that means. Don't have to deal with bots. Patreon subscribers direct. There's a lot of stuff I'm looking into linking. I just don't have time for it, honestly. I usually just look at the Discord. That's what the Discord is for. Can Intel ever realistically disrupt the GPU market? They should be able to, but so far they've screwed up almost every product that isn't a CPU. So I wouldn't bet on it, but I wouldn't rule them out again. Well, I don't know. So I guess one last thing to talk about, just one more time, closing this out, is what I said at the beginning of the live stream, is that I've seen people say, I don't want to be part of Twitter attacks. Well, then don't. I don't want anyone to be attacking anyone else on Twitter or YouTube in my name. I see it in the comments all the time. Ooh, shots fired, not shots fired. I don't even usually know when I disagree with someone because I haven't watched their video. People are allowed to disagree without having a blood feud. At least that's how I think. And so I don't want anyone attacking other people in my name. And don't post things in the comment section. This one person disagrees with you. This. I don't care if they disagree with me. They can disagree with me. But that doesn't mean I need to change my mind because someone disagrees with me. I might change my mind. I have changed my mind. But people are allowed to disagree. And so I just kind of want to say that one more time at the end of this, like I said at the beginning, because I'm seeing so many people freak out in the comments, downvote videos for unrelated reasons, and try to get tech tubers to argue with each other. Not interested. And stop trying to attack people for me. I did not tell you to attack anyone. But yeah, if there's no last minute tips, I think that should just about do it. Let me do one last scan, make sure I didn't miss any questions. Yeah, AMD DLSS equivalent. I've talked about it in recent broken silicons and in new ones. If you want to hear about what I think about AMD's answer to DLSS, listen to Broken Silicon. That's where most of the stuff comes out. AIB price fixing. You know, we can accuse them of price fixing once we're in quarter two. Right now, things are just a mess. So I think it's too early to draw any conclusions about a lot of who's to blame, except that we know publicly that Nvidia is selling cards directly to miners. There is a rumor about Sony and From Software. I think it'd be a good purchase if they can afford it, but it kind of feels like they missed the boat. I mean, I think what they really should do is buy all of the IP away from Konami, since Konami hates gamers. That's what I think Sony should do. All right, well, finally, let me say this then. Remember, there's 2,000 people watching now live. Remember to hit the like button, guys. I hope we could get to at least 2,000 likes. Hit the like button if you are watching. Remember, double check that you're subscribed and to ring the bell button so you don't miss new content coming out. I've got an entire end-of-year series coming out. And, of course, it will come out early and ad-free for patrons. There will be exclusive Patreon podcasts every week, pretty much, or every other week at least, and those keep coming as well. So remember, if you subscribe for some pretty, low monthly fees, you can submit these reader mails for free. You can get early and ad-free and Patreon-only podcasts. The last Die Shrink is the Patreon-only version of Broken Silicon. It's not Broken Silicon. It's an extra podcast. We talked about what makes an $800 graphics card worth it, and it was incredibly popular. There's also one where we talk about the problem with fanboys for an hour and a half. We titled that episode, The 2020 Fanboy Winter. You know what? Don't forget all of that content that's out there, and that it's not just putting food on the table. This is my full-time job. That this is, paying the audio engineer and Dan as well that you hear in Broken Silicon. So remember to support us. Remember to share the content. And I'm just starting to ramble. I don't really know what else there is to do. I guess I could bring in the dog quick before I quit. Reese! You guys remember the last live stream where she was on the porch and I forgot? That was hilarious. Reese, come here. Reese. Remember to have a good holiday season as well, guys. I mean, there's a lot of new products out people are trying to get. You don't need them as much as I talk about them. It's my job to talk about them. You don't need them, but you know where I stand on which ones I would recommend. Any stores restocking PS5s today? Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of the last wave was in that big Walmart order a week ago. Up, you're racing. Come here. And then, of course, there is the famous doggo herself, who I try to put in every commercial so you guys actually watch it. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. There will, of course, be another Loose Ends at the end of December, early January. Dan will probably actually be here for that one. And yeah, thank you for the support. I really do appreciate it during the holiday season. Usually we actually get less support during the holiday season, which is a little hard. But you know what? Thank you for those who do continue to support us. We'll keep putting out the content. I'm rambling. Goodbye. 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 Do you think there will be any Zen 3 Threadrippers? Yes, Andy. I do think there will be Zen 3 Threadrippers. I just do not think they will be here for a few months. All right. Goodbye, everybody.